Moving into the actual meeting, city administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor. Want to note that we've implemented the first two of our intersection changes. One being no right turn from Breedlove onto McDaniel. That's if you're heading northeast off of Breedlove, just that way. Got a number of accidents there as discussed previously. Hopefully this will help curtail that because of the poor visibility looking left. The other one is the no left turn on Davis Street between the hours of 7 a.m., 7 p.m. That seems to be the really high traffic volume time. Hopefully this will help. And we'll look at adding that additional signage you requested, Mr. Bradley, for another route out to South Broad, probably down Walker or Mill, something in that direction. I'll save everything else for what we have on the agenda tonight. Plenty to talk about.
Great, thank you. I'm moving
Hey,
to
Logan,
Yes, sir.
quick question. Have any of y'all went out through North Madison and Edwards?
Yes.
Have you come across any cars stopped on the other side of Edward and I guess it may be Williams as you go out through North Madison?
Encountered any stops?
Have you encountered 4 cars at one time? Because I've been out through there 4 to 5 times, and not one time have I saw 4 cars stop.
Yeah,
Nor has I saw 3 cars stop. The only cars I saw stop was on North Madison.
yeah, it's not really a matter of how many are coming at once. It was more along the lines of stopping the speeding down that stretch of road and also the line of sight right there when you're trying to get across Edwards and Williams as well. And anecdotally, we've had a lot of complaints from the citizens that live right there along those streets, especially the North Midland side, about the speeding situation through those intersections.
Do you know how many houses on North Midland?
There's not a lot, but there's a few that sit, fairly close to the road and a couple of apartment complexes.
Because I talked to a few people yesterday, and they were saying it almost would cause an accident as opposed to deter an accident.
Well, that's why we want to try to do as much on the PR campaign up front as we can, notifications, let everybody know that's coming down the line.
moving to the Central Services update, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, sir. A couple of just quick things. Marketing newsletters, the Water Conservation and Efficiency newsletter went out back in May, and we have the kits downstairs. Customer service and cashiers, they have forms and instructions on citizens if they'll come in and if they're customers of ours, fill out the sheet, get the kit, helps them save water, lowers their bill because it lowers the usage. The newsletter for the summer months, June, July, August, went out. We had a lot of articles and contributions from different organizations, the museum, Art Guild. We had some articles on the airport, same one that I'd updated you guys on the statewide study. It was a pretty good one. Police station and the plaza area, we had our kind of what should be our last design meeting this past Friday. To go over kind of what'll be the final layout. As soon as we get that drawing back out, I think we can share that with council to what the interior is going to look like. Budget numbers looking good right now. So I look forward to that staying there. The drive-through is complete as far as the equipment change out. So all of our lanes are currently working. We were down to, 2 for quite a period of time, and then we were down to 1, and we kept fingers crossed. So I come in yesterday morning and all 3 lights were on for open, so I figured that was a pretty good accomplishment. And then I'll bring the actual exterior reno for that side of the building to you here in a few minutes. And last thing I got, the community garden should actually be a couple of weeks away from taking shape and actually looking like a garden. So
It's a pilot.
yeah, so a couple of long months trying to put that together, and we should be there.
Who do you have?
Krista Carroll, Dexter Adams, they're helping us out. There's a couple other organizations involved. They're essentially going to start it as more of an educational tool. and use that as kind of the PR and the advertising campaign for it to then get members of the community more involved if they want to come in. But it'll be a couple of organizations using it to start with, which essentially was kind of the 50-50 intentions of it.
Right. Well, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Bailey? Comments? Thank you. Moving to committee information, Mr. Adcock with Finance.
Thank you, Mayor. First item on the agenda is our monthly finance report, and Ms. Thompson's going to do that, and then she's going to introduce Adam from Malden Jenkins. We're just going to roll it right into the second item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adcock. First, I want to say the financial status report as of April is in your packet. If anyone has any questions about that, I'll be glad to answer them. All departments and funds are within reason of budget for this time of year. We have finished up our final utility billing training for the new software. We are still slated to go live the week of July the 15th. Fingers crossed that nothing happens between now and then. We will be down a few days, but we will get the word out of what days we will potentially be down during that conversion and implementation. That is so that me and my staff can test data to make sure everything is accurate before we do the final conversion and go live. We will also be visiting some of us, the City of Douglas later this month because they are on the Tyler utility billing software. They're also on the same meter reading software we're on. They're also using the work order system that we use, which is HyperWeb, and also on the same after-hours call center that we use. So we want to see how they have implemented all those software and so that we can utilize their expertise on some of those so that we can kind of follow suit of the good things that happen on their end. As Chris said, the drive-through equipment repairs are completed, and all the ladies downstairs are very pleased with its functionality and think it's wonderful, so we appreciate y'all approving that. The 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, excuse me, has been finalized, as well as the gas report, which is the Government Auditing Standards Report. You have both of those in your packet and also a hard copy in front of you. I will be bringing to you next month the 2018 Popular Annual Financial Report, which is easier to read and a little more summarized. But I'll answer any questions that you may have, and if you don't have any, I'm going to bring Adam Fraley with Malden Jenkins up to go over the audit and the CAFR.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. As she mentioned there, you should have in your packets in hard copy, I believe, is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. I'll refer to as the CAFR quite a bit. And then the report in accordance with government auditing standards and the uniform guidance, the single audit as well. I also understand that y'all were emailed, and I know Ms. Thompson has copies for you, of our audit discussion analysis, and it's kind of a summary for me to go through of the highlights of the audit and some of the financial results that I'm gonna stick to as I present to you this evening. So, the city's responsibility each year is to close out its financial statements, report its financial information in the form of a financial report in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and submit that information to the state of Georgia within 6 months of its year end. Our responsibility as auditors is to audit that information in order to render our opinion on those financial statements. The financial statements were put together by management through their accounting function. We did render an opinion. It's called an unmodified audit report, which we oftentimes call a clean opinion. What that means is, based on our test work, the financial statements that you have are presented fairly in all material respects for the year, or its financial position and the results of operations for the year ended December 31st, 2018. In addition to the requirement by the state of Georgia to prepare financial statements and submit it within 6 months, the city of Monroe actually prepares a comprehensive annual financial report, which is above and beyond what state law requires. It includes additional sections of an introductory section and a statistical section, being that the stats section goes back 10 years of both financial and non-financial information. So as you're looking at the CAFR, you'll see that in the back of the CAFR, and a lot of good information there. And a lot of hard work goes into preparing such a document by the city's finance department. So, you know, it's a really good document, a big pat on the back to the finance department for putting together such a good looking and well put together document with a lot of good information. Just some of the financial highlights. The city as a whole ended its year with total assets of about $142 million. That was offset by liabilities of about $35 million, leaving a net position or an equity of the city of about $107 million. A lot of that obviously is tied up in capital assets in the form of roads and bridges, et cetera. When you take that out of that net position, it leaves about $18 million that is unrestricted, not in capital assets, and available for future operations of the city. The city during the year 2018 added to that net position about $7.2 million. That's the city as a whole. The general fund is obviously a main operating fund of the city. And the city's general fund operated on pretty much a break-even basis for the year. So its revenues and its transfers in from other funds compared to its expenditures and maybe transfers out to other funds were approximately, were real close. So it was about a $9,000 use of fund balance in that fund this year. It resulted in ending fund balance of about $2.75 million for the general fund. Annual expenditures of the general fund are about $11.25 million. And so at 2018, about 24%, you have about 24% of your annual expenditures in that fund balance, so that reserve, if you will. That has, so in the document, it's gone around 29 to 33% in past years. It was 23% last year, and it's a slight improvement to about 24.5% this year. Your business type activities also are a main part of the operations of the city. And assets ended in the business type activities this year. They increased about $4.7 million to about $108 million. Liabilities, they decreased from 24.7 to about 24.5, so a slight decrease in the total liabilities. And then the net position in the business type activities increased from about $78.7 million to about $83.5 million. In business type activities, about $18.9 million of it is in unrestricted and considered available for future operations. The operations of the business type activities, you know, we do a cash flow statement in the actual financial statements. I always kind of turn to that. It's a real good analysis of how the operations are going in those type proprietary environments. The operating cash flows amounted to about $8.9 million for this year compared to about $9.8 million for last year. So to gauge just those cash flows from operations there. In conclusion, though, for business type activities, the cash and cash equivalents had a decrease of about $1.9 million and then an ending balance of about $15.6 million of cash in those funds. One of the other items that are in this document has to do with the required communications, and I'm not going to go through each one of those, but some of the things that we have to report in our required communications is whether we had any significant difficulties with management, any disagreements with management concerning any accounting principles and the application of those. And I'm happy to say we didn't have any difficulties or disagreements with management. They were very helpful in getting us everything we needed in a timely manner and being able to present to you tonight, of course, meeting with the state deadline and also submitting this to the GFOA for their award for the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. So we really appreciate that. We did have some audit adjustments. They were discussed with management. They've been posted to the Journal Ledger. They're posted to the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report as well. Just to, again, they're fairly presented for the year. We had no adjustments that we proposed that we passed on. In other words, that sometimes things may be of an immaterial. We didn't have any items there. All adjustments proposed were actually made to the journal ledger and the financial report. We did have one finding and one recommendation. The finding relates, it's a timing issue. It's an accounting issue related to accrued payroll and the pooled cash, and having to do with the city system created a system automatically generated adjusting entry that actually accrued payroll at year end, but in the improper period, in the next period versus at year end. It was accrued and it wasn't, it was a timing thing, and of course we had to make an adjustment for that, and the standards require us to make that actually as a finding. So that, you'll see that in there. That's the only the only finding that we had. The recommendation we had has to do with IT cybersecurity. This is a growing threat in our environment and all kinds of different businesses, but even in, with governments that we've seen in the state of Georgia. And one thing there is just, with that growing threat, we are recommending that the city consider doing an IT cybersecurity risk assessment and also put in monitoring of the risks associated with that. And just a kind of as a byproduct of the audit, a recommendation there. That concludes my presentation, but if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Thank you. And I do for Logan. Do we already do an IT risk assessment? Is that what Steve's been working on?
We do. We have several layers. I don't want to disclose those, but yeah, we do.
Okay. So,
We certainly do.
so
But
good. Thank you
we're-
for the recommendation.
And we'll keep improving on it. I mean, it's a continuous process improvement, so you're right about that. We got to keep moving forward with it.
Absolutely. And what we're seeing at most governments is they have varying degrees of this in-house. And what we're seeing a lot of them could use is just like the monitoring component.
If you could, do you have any that you would specifically recommend you could get with maybe Beth and recommend a couple that might be something that we could review too? That'd be good. I don't know, you probably don't want to say them out loud for risk of somebody wanting to tap into it.
Certainly.
Do we have any other comments or questions?
Adam, just a quick one. There was one mention of material weakness in internal control. What was that about?
That was the accrued payroll. I referred to it as a finding generically. And the standards, because of the magnitude of it, it had to be a material weakness. And it was just a timing accounting thing that the system wasn't caught.
And I will say that we have taken proactive measures so that that will not happen again.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Adam.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
The next item on the agenda is the City Hall drive-through exterior rehabilitation. Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, sir. This is kind of that last little piece to the exterior that I had mentioned earlier. It's the same process that we went through on the exterior of the building 2.5 years ago, roughly, and we left that drive-through portion because we knew at some point we were going to come back, redo the equipment, change that out. We didn't want to go through this and then tear something up and then have to come back and redo it all again. So what we've done is waited for the equipment install to happen, and now we had Garland, which we've used plenty of times before, come back in, bid everything out for that drive-through portion, the exterior to come back, seal everything. It joints, cracks, paint everything, pressure wash it, clean it, seal it, flash some things. We've got some issues with that back door that actually goes out to the drive-through where it leaks a bit, and fix all of that. And this is under that City Hall renovation budget that was requested in the CIP, I believe in 17, that was originally $225,000, and we're still, we're almost to the point that we're finished with this, and we're gonna be well under budget, because this final portion is the $20,480. And then we were fortunate that Middlebrooks Building Company won the low bid on doing the interior renovations to the counters, cashiers, and to the desktops back there. So that'll save us quite a bit. But that's what the request is for that approval of the low bid to Terra Systems for $20,480 to finish the exterior.
Okay, we need a motion from the committee to recommend the full council.
Motion to approve the $20,480, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll present that to full council next Tuesday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes our agenda items this evening, Mayor.
Thank you, everybody. Mr. Garrett, airport?
Chris?
Should have brought the sheet with me, forgot I was right up after that. Fuel sales for May dropped off just a little bit, but it also plays into how we submit reports. So we still had about 4 or 5 days of fuel sales to counter in for May, but our numbers are still up. We dropped our price per gallon to $4.29 a gallon, so that still a very good month. Project update, we had the final signing off after we figured out the online part of it to approve our additional punch list to the East Apron, where they're going to come back and do some erosion control, some additional, add riprap to one of the drain areas. And if you remember, I told you we were $68,000 under budget. This additional punch list will only cause us an additional expense of about $35,000, and then the rest of that will actually go to that west side that we are still dealing with getting approval from the state for testing, different things to haul that off to Oak Grove. But everything should be in place and should happen. The big jump event that was moved from, I think it was the one Saturday to May 18th, actually this year raised a little over $140,000. So that was a good effort by Bill Scott, especially on a rescheduled Saturday because of weather.
10,000 more than last year, right?
They was equal to last year. So not bad considering it kind of paired up with other events that were going on. They still had a pretty good showing that day. And that raised it for the ESP organization out of Watkinsville. So I'll be glad to take any questions.
No question. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Moving to Mr. Dickinson, Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Smith, would you give us the solid waste report, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dickinson. I just want to highlight the April tonnage report. Our numbers was up compared to March. Our collection side took up over 1,300 tons. Transfer station inbound tonnage, we had over 6,700 tons deposited into the transfer station, which is an increase of 1,200 tons compared to April last year. And we will be extending the hour Fridays to 5 o'clock again for June. April, we kind of broke even, mainly because of the Good Friday, so we didn't operate on that Friday, on the 19th. Couple projects we got, we did start the project, drainage project on the 17th, and it's ongoing until it's completed. We're still looking to secure a contractor for the tipping floor. And other than that, yard trimming collection, we're off schedule. We anticipated being on schedule and caught up by the end of the week. Take any questions that you might have.
All right, no questions. Mr. Still, would you give us streets and transportation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Highlighting a few current things right now. Side boom mower's still out, really making a big difference within our right-of-ways. It's got a rough appearance initially, but the areas that we've went through on the initial run are already starting to green up, so it's really clearing the additional outside parts of the right-of-way to a maintainable place to where it's starting to green back up and looking a lot better than it was in the past. We have started saw cutting Alcovey Street for deep patching. We probably have a week of cutting before we'll actually start the removal of the messed up asphalt to put back in for the deep patch to get ready for the county to pave it. We've recently finished the permanent seeding on the Spring Street sidewalk project. The grass is starting to come in and looks really, really good on the far end by the plaza. And it's starting to come in gradually in some of those other areas. The soil was a little different in some of those areas. It's delayed the coming up some, so it's gonna look really, really, really nice once it all comes in. And I will highlight again the drainage project at the transfer station. It's about 50% complete. Just got to tie in the top end of that section with the inlets coming off of the driveway at the transfer station, and that will be complete. And unless you have some questions off the report, that's it for me, and I'll be glad to take any.
Has DOT started working on the exterior corridors around 78 and Loop 10 to clean up?
I saw him today,
I think
on the west side.
Okay.
they have that contract under wraps now, so.
Yeah, they were on the
hopefully-
Cedar Ridge side today.
Great, okay.
What is remaining to be completed on the West Spring Street project?
There's a punch list.
A lot. We've basically had them go back and rebuild entire sections of the project to get the drainage right. A lot in the middle of the project is remaining to be redone. And, you know, the ugly black concrete along the side, we're gonna get that pulled up for the length of the project and repoured, cut out and repoured, into a proper asphalt or concrete. So there's a lot to do. We haven't made any more payments to the contractor in quite a while. So they are performing, just really slowly. So, I mean, they're back in liquidated damages right now.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay. We have one action item, which is the Playhouse roof replacement and rehabilitation. Mr. Bailey?
Okay, it's the last time y'all hear from me tonight. I'm wanting to make a change to what we had pre-approved kind of in the CIP budget for this year. We had the Public Works office building, their main building, the old City Hall building. Both of those were roof repairs and exterior because we basically had leaking issues. The Art Guild was the second part of theirs, but it was an exterior, just to clean paint, pressure washed, kind of seal windows, but the leaking issues are fixed there. So because of the way our funding's working this year and we're wanting to push some things back and essentially allow funding to catch up with me, we want to push the Art Guild off to later in the year, which then would save us $30,000 roughly from that CIP budget. And then I want to take the onstage Walton Playhouse building and put that into that CIP item, which is roughly for the same amount. I think it's $27,000 and some few odd dollars, $27,894. Because they're having extensive issues with roof leaking. It's an older building. If you've been by, the fascia there's a lot of places that are rotten where we had cleared trees this past year, hoping that would kind of allow some things to air out, and just stuff doesn't fix itself. So this request is to completely remove the shingles that are there, fix the decking that's there. They're going to have to go up the tower in the front. I'm not real sure of a technical term of it. Put shingles there, flash all around, come back, fix the fascia, clean that, paint it. We're going to put in gutter systems over that side awning that exists where the parking lot is, and then on the far side where the AC unit is, because when rain runs off, it hits the AC unit, splatters up onto the building, rots out the side. So essentially, we're going to fix all of that. So my request in a short run is to push the Art Guild back to later in the year and move this kind of into its place. And that's my request to council approval for that amount. And essentially, it's a 1-to-1.
All right, committee, I need a motion.
Move to approve the repair at the Playhouse building in the amount of $27,894.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's unanimous. Mr. Mayor will recommend that to the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson.
Thank you very much.
And that's all we have this evening.
Moving to Mr. Little, Utilities.
Thank you, Mayor. First item is the electric and telecom report. You're doing that, Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Yes, just a couple items of interest to look at tonight. On the electric side, we are continuing to work with the developer at the apartments on South Broad down at the mill. That's moving forward. We're also meeting with the contractors about the Spring Street Reconductor project that's taking place. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's where Mr. Thompson is tonight. He's actually working on that. And the lighting installation is close to being complete on North Broad from Marable Street to Perry Street. And if I understand correctly, I believe it's about a 2-week time frame we're looking on that to being completed. For the telecom side, we turned on our first fiber customer in the Stone Creek subdivision. We got our first service active up there last week. Pretty excited about that. And the engineering firms that we've been talking to about our feasibility study and transitioning the cable system to fiber that we've talked about, we should have bids submitted for that by the end of June to bring before the council for presentation. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them the best I can for you.
Thank you, Mike. Next item is the water, sewer, and gas and stormwater report. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Little. As far as report goes, everything's pretty consistent with last month's report, outside of moving the CIP completion list to the bottom. That way you can track our progress on those projects. I do have one emergency purchase, I guess I can make you aware of. We had recently done a gas leak survey on our system, and there was a leak found on Highway 11 South towards Social Circle. That line's a 4-inch high-pressure main. It's 150 pounds. It used to feed Social Circle when they got their gas through our system. Since then, it's been done away with, capped just outside the railroad tracks there. And anyway, we dug it up Friday, and there is about a 45-foot section of the original seam that split open. That's assuming that's all put in at the same time, it's 3.8 miles worth of high-pressure steel that's got to be replaced. So we dropped back, got some other ideas, and I've got 3 bids here. A low bid being $19,995. Basically, what we're going to do is drop back to the Pleasant Valley Road regulator station, come in on the low-pressure side, put the low-pressure side up to the high-pressure side that heads towards Social Circle, drop it from 150 to 30. Should take care of the leak, give us a little time to plan for the 3.8 miles, and make it all safe. That was the quickest solution we had. You can't weld a seam when it's running down the pipe with the gas on there, so it's not something you can wrap or cut a section out. It's just a little more complicated than that. So this was a quick fix, but it is temporary. This is something we'll have to put the low pressure side in. Won't affect our system at all, other than losing that high pressure side, but we don't need it down there anyway, because Social Circle's not buying gas through us. They have their own tap now. It also, we get to remove 19 farm taps and 3 additional regulator stations, which will also save us some money down the road, because those have to be maintained every year. You have a contractor comes in that does the regulator checks and all that stuff, so there will be some money savings on that end. So the low, like I said, the low bid was Southern Pipeline at $19,995. If you got any questions on the report,
Now, will you get rid of a section of the high-pressure line?
yes, we'll, right outside, as soon as we get the low-pressure side connected, we'll have a valve cut in to isolate those two pieces, and then the low-pressure side will come around and tie into the 4-inch steel, and we'll just drop that pressure.
But then you'll have to repair that.
The 4-inch steel is still gonna have to be replaced, it just buys us some time. We went 150 pounds down to 30. So it'll buy us a little bit of time to plan on the whole rehab.
When you say a little time, Rodney, how much is a little time we're buying? Is this measured in months or years?
No, months.
What, I mean, I know you're gonna look at it, but what do you think the cost is gonna be?
We are pretty certain that we could do the pipe work ourselves, since we're going to 4-inch plastic. So we're just looking at 3.8 miles of 4-inch plastic. I'd say probably, Chris, you may be able to help me on this if you've seen any of the recent purchases, but I'm gonna say probably in the $40,000 to $50,000 range. And then we would install ourselves.
Yes, question I've got is, the 19,000 you're talking about spending now is the stopgap.
Right. You've got to make it low pressure, or you've got to kill the whole line, because I can't weld it.
But is that 19,000 in addition then to the 40,000?
Yes.
But if you could go ahead and do the 40,000, you wouldn't need the 19.
No, I got to have the 19 no matter what. I've got to get hooked up to that low pressure side.
Well, in that case, is there a motion to approve the $19,995 expenditure?
Did we already spend the emergency? Do we just need?
That just came up today.
Yeah, I just got the quotes in today, so.
Okay, so we do need a motion.
Well, we need to technically add it to the agenda, make a motion to add that to the agenda. As
It's actual item.
as an actual
Vote.
item 4C. And then we can move through the process of approving that.
Okay. I'm going to move that we add an item to the agenda, 4C of the gas line that he just discussed.
Motion by, are you going to handle that, Mayor? The addition to the agenda?
Yes, sir. We've got it under utilities, so we would need the motion from the committee now. And then do you want to follow through with it immediately thereafter from the rest of the? You do it from the committee and then I'll
do it.
follow up.
The motion to add it to the agenda?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Second.
All right, Mr. Bradley's made the motion to add item 4C to the agenda, which is the expenditure of $19,995 for the gas line. I'll second that. All those on the committee that approve it, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The item is added to the agenda for discussion. So is there a formal motion, Mr. Bradley? You making the motion?
To approve that, or to recommend it be on the consent agenda for next week? Yes.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Adcock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We make that motion to recommend it to full council.
Thank you.
Mayor, I think that's all we got.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Moving to Mr. Larry Bradley for public safety, please.
Yes, we're at the monthly fire report from Chief Orr.
Thank you, sir. We have just standard numbers as we normally have over the last several months for April. Just a couple items to note that we are still doing hydrant testing and flow testing, and maintenance is still underway throughout the city. And we did have 13 public relations events due to our spring coming in strong. The recruit class did do their live fire last Saturday. We did not actually complete that. We actually shut it down on the last evolution. It was getting a little hot. We was gonna end up hurting somebody, so we actually just shut it down. We're gonna revisit that and complete that later on next week. But, that's what I have to note right now. Be happy to answer any questions y'all have.
Any questions in the fire report? Not, we'll move to the police report.
I want to
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
publicly thank Chief Bill Owens for the job that they did on Sunday with the guns down, water downs up. I think the kids really enjoyed the fire department. They really engaged out there. So for that, I want to say thank you, Bill, just in case nobody else thank you. And I also want to thank the sheriff department for giving us the backup that they thought we may need. And I would like to say, you know, I'm actually disappointed in this council for not really stepping up to try to make sure something was actually successful for the young kids in Monroe. I had more questions Friday about people drinking when this council actually passed an ordinance for people to drink. But yet, I took 1,000 questions about how many people gonna be out there drinking, and in actuality, no one drunk. Not a single person was out there drinking. And I'm really disappointed in the effort that I actually got from this council when it came to stepping up, trying to make sure something was successful in our community. But it almost seemed like one community is not welcome in our community. I think we should take a good, hard look at what we're saying and what we're actually doing when it comes to everybody in the city of Monroe. And I got a chance to talk to the sheriff, and he told me that his officer said they really enjoyed the water gun event. But I do not believe I got so much pushback from trying to have a water gun event for the kids around the city. The sad part is I ain't heard none of y'all even thank Bill for participating. He did everything in his power to make sure that we could get that event kicked off. He was one of the few that actually were doing everything in his power to make sure we can get that event kicked off. And I'm sure y'all know by now I'm highly ticked about how this actually played out on Friday all the way up until Sunday. Because I ain't never seen so much nonsense in my life. There's no way that all of us shouldn't have been tried to be a part of that water event being kicked off and being successful. Yet, I will give it to Logan. I think Logan actually did all he could to actually help get it done. So I do not want to act like Logan didn't play a major role in trying to make sure that event actually got kicked off on Sunday, because he really did. And I want to thank you too, Logan, for all the back and forth going through it, trying to actually get it kicked off at Coker Field like where we actually intended for it to be. I hope next time that we got a better participation from the city council than we actually got this time. This is actually, I mean, it really was pitiful to just be out there answering questions, but how the city council pushing back on you like that? I hope y'all take a good hard look, because I know the first thing y'all was saying was, it's gonna be trouble. They kept trying to tell me, oh, we want people to look at the video from Athens. We're not Athens. I don't need to see what's going on in Athens. I need to know what's going on in Monroe. And I'm still ticked off about the little and lack of support that we actually got. Even though the event was successful, I'm still highly upset from the lack of support came from this city council. And I'm assuming that the mayor said y'all left him in charge to make all the decisions. And the pushback that I actually got from him, it was really disappointing. And I want to let that be known, but I also want to thank the sheriff and his department for really coming out there, stepping up if we actually needed help.
I can jump in there, Norman, and with all due respect, I kind of have an idea of what you're talking about, but I don't know what you're even referring to.
Yeah, I was gonna
You keep
ask
saying the
that.
entire council.
I never got invited to anything. I wasn't even aware of it.
I didn't get a phone call or an email or a face-to-face conversation, so are you,
Well, the mayor said he was speaking for the council. So if he's speaking for the council, then he should have made the call to y'all.
was it his event or?
It wasn't his responsibility to invite him to an event that obviously you orchestrated. It was your event.
I wasn't invited.
I wasn't invited. I didn't know anything about it.
Nor was I, Mr. Garrett.
But water guns, that'd be,
So I think it's a bit unfair to paint with such a broad brush and say the council didn't support something if the council hadn't had an opportunity.
So let me
Go
ask you,
one way or
this. So
the
all
other.
of y'all said none of y'all knew about the event on Sunday?
No.
Exactly.
no clue. I haven't heard about it through the Boys and Girls Club or anything.
That's amazing.
But I did know. What day did I know? Friday, late, that you had tried to have the event at Coker Field. And I was very glad that that was not where it ended up. I mean, that area and that venue is closed because of safety, and there's no water there. Well, I mean, we totally shut that down a year ago.
Rodney actually put water in. Because it is water running out there, just a matter of hooking it up and turning it on.
Where, was it held at Felker Park, I guess?
Yeah, we actually had to move it over to Feckle Park.
Gotcha. I'll be all for something like that in the future, if you just give me a heads up. I mean, was there a ton of city planning that went into this? I know like First Friday concerts and all that takes months and months and months. So was that like when did it start?
I mean, it only take 2 weeks to tell people you can come out there and shoot water gun.
Gotcha.
So it ain't like we did a whole lot other than just spraying water around.
Just point of clarification, I got word from Mr. Garrett on Tuesday sometime, and we looked at the event. I didn't really know much about the event. He said he wanted to have a little barbecue and water balloon event at Coker. So I looked into the aspect of the use of Coker Park. We tried to get it ready, Streets and Transportation stepped up, mowed the field, we filled some potholes, water crew stepped up. Didn't really feel comfortable with the water situation. The lines are very brittle, as reported. They needed to be chlorinated. There was a lot of fast-moving stuff going on with this, so, I didn't feel comfortable with it. And as far as, securing ingress and egress in the park, public safety didn't really feel secure with that as well. And, this happened pretty quickly on the notice, but we did everything we could to try to ensure the event went on at Felker Park. So I'm happy it eventually went off.
Yeah.
Next time I'll be talking to you, Ross, about
appreciate
helping
that.
get it done.
I mean, water guns and, with, being involved with the Boys and Girls Club, we could have a lot of fun with that. Not to mention I love barbecue, so
Gotcha.
I would certainly appreciate an invite.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the Police Department monthly report.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. As you can see, our calls for service have went up for the month of April, and I think we'll continue to see that as the summer months come along. You got longer days, warmer weather, so we see a lot more activity. Some things to note, our Part 1 crimes are down by 46%. Part 2 crimes are just a little bit up by 28%. We did have 97 adult arrests, 9 juvenile. We participated in 7 community events. One significant one on here is the DEA drug take back, where we assign one day on a weekend there on the 27th of April, and we ended up taking in 3 large trash bags full of expired prescription drugs that will otherwise could make its way on the street, and that totaled up to about 37.89 pounds, so 38 pounds of prescription pills we got off on the street just on that one day of DEA drug take back. One of the things I also want to note with the issues we've been dealing with the tractor trailers, we've received a lot of complaints, tractor trailers on Church Street, even with the signage that's out there, and I know we've talked before, even with the Public Works about signage, and those signs are pretty big, but we did coordinate, and we got a huge sign that's out there now on Church Street as you come into the city. It's about the size of the screen behind you here. that directs all tractor-trailer traffic coming in through the city on Church Street to turn right on Hammond Drive, just to divert it from that downtown corridor there. And also with that, I'm supposed to have a meeting tomorrow morning with Georgia Motor Carrier Compliance, which are the units you see out there from the state that enforce the laws on your tractor trailers. So we're going to see about also coordinate with them and having them enforce there. I think we're seeing a better improvement over there, but want to try to enforce it best we can. And I said last time when I was in here, you know, we implemented the Joint Operations Unit, which is the four-man team on each rotation that's actually out here aggressively patrolling the streets, trying to make an impact on the criminal element. And these are some of the stats that we've got just from the time they've been out there. This unit has already executed 10 search warrants. They've made 48 different drug cases since they've been and been around doing what they're doing. And they also had 321 traffic stops. They've issued 80 citations and 228 warnings. We've taken 8 weapons off the streets, and they themselves have had 43 different arrests. And to me, that's pretty significant, which is going in the direction we want to do as far as cleaning up the streets around here and getting these kind of individuals that are engaged in this criminal activity outside our city. I'll be more than happy to take any questions if you should have any.
I have one. I've just got a note this afternoon from a Miss Kuykendall, very unhappy with the 18-wheelers that have to take a ride on Hammond. She said, I think they should have to turn on Unicia, which I think we can probably all agree, but could we maybe put the sign down further before they get to?
Yes, sir. Mayor, if that's where you want it to be, we'll push it on down the street.
Because we definitely want them on Unicia, but I'm afraid they turn off of Unicia onto.
But I'll also say this, though, just to show you how actively we've been enforcing that. We actually caught the tractor trailer that was dropping off Commerce to Jack Peters' store, so I had to deal with that issue and say, I'm sorry, we've just been getting a lot of complaints. Don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. So just trying to do our best to meet the needs of the community out there.
I appreciate it. I just got that this afternoon, sorry.
Yes.
Aren't some of those trucks, though, coming off Unicia, so they're not like we could do?
Right.
That's primarily what you see.
Yeah, they're coming from, I would say, more of the Walmart distribution center areas down there, just making their way back to Highway 11.
Is the thought that at Unicia and Church Street to put a sign that says, basically, trucks can't turn right here?
I think that turns into a mess trying to do a U-turn.
I think you'd probably be more out to probably put it right there in front of Walmart distribution center.
I think they're aware. They do it because it's the quickest route.
That's right.
Who controls that fine?
I'm sorry?
Who controls the fine for that obvious?
That'll flow through the Muni Court.
Right.
I hate to punish a truck driver because I know how hard they work, but, you know, maybe not a first offense, but figure out folks that are repeat offense or from certain carriers. I mean, it's one option.
And that's, like RV was saying, we hope the State Motor Compliance Division
Jumps on that.
Jumps on that for sure.
Any other questions for Chief? We have 2 action items from the fire department, so I'll ask Chief Owens if he will address the first one, which is a gear for 7 recruits.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. The first item we have before you is the purchase for bunker gear, and this is for our recruit class that we were just talking about earlier, that just finished up their, or currently doing their live fire training. We're in our 5th month now. We're very confident they're going to complete this program. And so this would be the actual fire gear for those individuals.
First question, I guess, is, I know for the year, we had budgeted $34,500 for gear equipment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so now we're just asking for $15,890, which will still leave us with over $18,000 in the budget. Is that correct?
No, sir. I think currently we do have $18,000 remaining in that.
Okay, so once this is, then
We'd have,
just a little over $2,000.
yes, sir. Absolutely.
And is that going to be sufficient for the remainder of the year?
Should be for the remainder of the year. This budget item is basically for our gear. That's what we use it for every single year. So any new hires, anybody that leaves, any gear gets destroyed or tore up, as we move through the year, that's what it's used for. And that's generally taken care of in the first few months. The remainder of this was budgeted for the recruit class.
Do I hear a motion for this to be approved from the committee?
I'll make that motion.
Have a motion from Mr. Ross Bradley, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Malcolm. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. We'll move that to the agenda for next week for the full council. And then we have another action item. Chief Owens, you going to address this one too?
Yes, sir. The next item we have before you is for the purchase of a new, used fire pumper for the fire department. This is a Band-Aid. I don't want to make it sound bad, but we were desperately in need for a new apparatus, new fire truck. The ones we have are 25 years old. They are very much on their last leg, and this is more so to just give the city more time, several years, 3 to 5 years' time, before we're really going to be faced with a $500,000 purchase. And so we happened upon this. Johns Creek was selling theirs. It's only 11 years old now. It only has 100,000 miles on it. It's a larger engine. It was built to last. And so we visited last week, went around with it, drove it, pumped it, met all of our expectations and actually exceeded most of them. And so overall, I think it's going to be a very good purchase for the city and definitely buy us some time before we have to invest into a brand-new pumper in the future, several years on that. So the purchase price is for $50,000. I don't know if Logan wanted to add into that as far as the SPOS fund or anything.
Yeah, we're kind of draining the last bit of that SPOS bucket that was unallocated or unearmarked for anything. So we had 53.5 roughly left in there, and this will be the $50,000 eating that up. So glad we had a little bit left.
So if this lasts us 3 to 5 years, then we're going to spend $500,000.
We will. I know Chief Owens has requested this for many years, but we just, that's a tough pill to swallow. But if we can get it for 10% and it lasts us 3 to 5 years, I think that's a pretty good win. And, Johns Creek pretty much only buys the best. So, they replaced it, I think, with a $1 million unit last year. So this has been out of service for 6 months plus. Hopefully, I'm sure it's in good condition. They inspected it, so I think it's a win for us to replace the other one. And to be honest, I wrote in the other one that it's replacing. It needs replacing. It doesn't go. Yeah.
Top end, 25 miles an hour?
About 25, I think, is
Yeah.
all we got. Down 78, yeah.
Are there any questions for either Chief Owens or for Logan? Do I hear a motion from the committee?
I'll move we approve the purchase of the $50,000 unit from Johns Creek.
Okay, motion by Mr. Ross Bradley, a second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Malcolm, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimous. We'll put that on the agenda for next week. That's all we have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Moving to planning and code, Ms. Malcolm.
Yes. Mr. Kelly?
Chairman Malcolm, I appreciate it. Just some highlights from the month of April from the code department. We had 103 code inspections, wrote 108 permits. In the business license department, we had 13 new businesses. We're showing 16 closed on that report. That's a little bit skewed due to the fact that some of those were residential offices that are no longer operating and change of ownership in there. So we're not really bleeding businesses like that might indicate. And we've got a lot of new ones being established. Major projects that were permitted in that period, we didn't have any major projects at that time. We did have ongoing projects, including Silver Queen, which is still going strong. The Main Street Apartment Complex, eventually they'll be done with their erosion control structures and maybe build a building sometime, but that was ongoing at that time as well. Murphy USA, I don't know if any of y'all have seen that, but it's almost completed. Landscaping was going in. It looks quite nice compared to what was there before. So that's an actual major upgrade on that location. One that's not on there, South on Broad, was continuing to go in April, and now they've got their temporary CO because of some technicalities and truthfully ridiculousness. But anyhow, they're open. They've done their soft opening from what I understand, some good food and a nice watering hole. So everybody go and enjoy that. Let's see, on the city marshal, he had 41 signs that he removed from the roadway in that time period, wrote 148 repair cleanup notices, investigated 5 utility and tampering and theft cases, wrote 4 citations on those. The balance of the report is there. If you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malcolm. Moving to economic development, Mr. Ross Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Crosby, would you like to join us for economic development report, please?
Thank you very much. We have had a lot going on. We had our first Children's Book Festival in May. That went well, even though we had to deal with weather. But we brought in, or Story Shop, in conjunction with us, brought in a number of authors, young adult authors, children's authors. They had a great experience in Monroe, and we hope to build on that event in the future. It was a great first one. And then we also hosted the Georgia Municipal Association Heart and Soul Workshop. That was an honor to host. Thank you for council members that were able to be there. We had really great feedback, and it's an honor to get to share the accomplishments we've made in our downtown development, and that's a reflection of you guys and your leadership, so thank you. There's a lot of things on this list. We're also going to be featured at GMA in the rapid fire sessions, talking about some of our alleyway improvements that we've done. And one of the most important things I wanted you guys to be aware of is that the 3rd annual Housing Expo that we host with, it's with Hope Monroe and the Walton Barrow Board of Realtors. We do it at the community building. We won't have another council meeting before that event. That's on July 6th. It's one of my favorite events we do because it's open to residents to make sure they're aware of the resources that are available because they live in the city of Monroe through USDA, Department of Community Affairs, to make home ownership possible. So there's a lot of great resources. We had over 200 people there the first year. I would love for y'all to attend. This, especially those of you that's representatives from your district in that Church Street area. It's one of the best things that we do for citizens because housing touches everybody. We do sessions all morning, we offer childcare, and then we have a cookout and a family festival for people to actually talk to vendors. Fire and police participate, Sheriff's Department participates. It's a great event. I'll be sending you more information about it, but I wanted to make sure that you heard about it here. Right now, the planning committee is getting sponsors that do vendor booths. There are sponsor forms in the back if you know of businesses that you think would like to be involved in that. So please grab that, and your participation there would be really helpful and appreciated by citizens. I didn't put it on here because I forgot with so much going on. We have the new parking signs up. I'm sure you've seen those in our public lots. That's part of this ongoing campaign to help people realize the available parking right off of Broad Street. And also want to introduce you 2 things. I wanted to pass out the Flower Festival activities. This is a new event we're doing, and there are a ton of events that are going to be going on at the Arts Center and with us, and introduce you to our summer intern. This is Samantha Sam Tippett. She's a graduate of Berry College, and she's going to give you that information about Flower Festival. You can sign up for all those workshops online. And this is in conjunction with our farmers market, so we'll do a big flower theme. And then also I asked Sam to kind of answer some questions about how she knew about Monroe, what she thinks about it, and kind of her background. And I wanted you guys to have this too, so you can get to know her. She'll be here for June and July, helping us with concerts, the Housing Expo, all of our events. And she came and was an intern with Monroe through the local program that Grace did a couple years ago, and now she's back. So that's exciting. So now pass those out. Her job tonight is basically to pass things out and say hey. So that's most of what I have for you. There's a lot of other items on here. And the pictures that are included are from one of the book readings of the author from the book festival, and then a part of that group from the GMA conference, or GMA training that we hosted. We had 48 people attend that. It's the largest one that GMA's ever done. So
I was gonna say, if we had 48 people there, that was 48 compliments to the city. It was really awesome, and kudos to Sadie because you knocked it out of the park with the presentation. Unfortunately, didn't have enough time to really talk about all the great things. So many people were walking around town talking about how clean it was and how amazing it looked. So hats off to the business owners and the citizens because it was a great day.
And this Saturday, when I was walking down the street, one lady stopped me and she goes, "Hey, I was here for the training." And she'd brought 3 more friends and come back to shop.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Any other questions? All right, thanks, Ms. Crosett, and thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Heart and Soul was great. Thank you, Mr. Bradley. I'll move into Ms. Crawford, Parks.
No report. What I was going to report is moved down for an item of action tonight on the town green. That's all, Ms. Crawford.
Thank you both. Moving into items of discussion, the public hearing variance at 1415 East Church Street. Mr. Stone.
Yes, thank you. The first one we have up is to talk about 1415 East Church Street. Currently, there's a variance request to reduce the lot size from 14,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. This is a 52.3 acre site. Currently, as depicted, the development will be required to comply with 15% open green space with amenities for recreation. They'll also have to have impact studies and connectivity. I put a chart together to compare between the 14,000 and the 10,000. Basically, this is going to look, smell, and see just like an R1 development from the road frontage. The frontage is going to still be 100 foot wide as required in R1. The difference is the lots are not going to be as deep. That's the 10,000 square feet reduction. Particular on this site, the advantage of doing this is, number one, there's 2 creeks that intersect that park in which that will be preserved as green space. The other advantage of this would be all the trees saved for green space as well. So I put the chart together. The 14,000 square feet versus the 10,000 square feet, the lot density is 1.8 on the 14,000 versus the 10,000 of 2.1. Connectivity is going to be required. Like I said, 15% open green space would be required on the 10,000. If it was the 14,000, it wouldn't quite exceed the 100 units, therefore it would not be required. So by doing this, it would be required. They both will have to have impact studies if it will remain to be R1 without the variance. So the impact studies for utilities, traffic, school systems, and capacity would be required. Like I said, green space environmental quality will end up by going for the reduced lots, 7.8 acres of creeks, trees, and vegetations won't be impacted. If we go with the full-blown R1, you'll only have 1.5. Architectural standards will apply. The difference between the R1 with the 14,000 versus the 10,000, the R14 additional conditions cannot be required. We can condition the R1 10,000 square foot lot. So that's the synopsis of that. Our recommendation is approval of the reduced lot size, pending the balance of the zoning requirements. Any questions?
The only one I have is that there are approximately 15 lots abutting the 2 streets, East Church and Young Street. And the back of those homes, unless we require that planted buffer, would be exposed. And I think our objective is not to have that. Is that going to affect them on lot size? Or a redesign, but I just think it's very important that they include that.
I don't believe it would impact the lot size. It would just have to, that could be a part of the conditions.
Okay.
And
I love the fact that, it's preserving the green space.
You said, so you have them abut both streets, okay.
Some of that would therefore abut the transmission line. Is that the side you're talking about?
That'd be on Young Street, I think.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
but
So if you're talking about planted buffer in between,
mainly,
between the transmission or on the backside of the
well, I'm talking about a planted buffer along East Church Street.
Okay.
Because there's a number, there's all but 4 lots abutting there. And you're just going, and that's level, you're going to be looking in the back of people's, backyards. And I know we required that on several other developments we've done. And just it's actually a good buffer for noise for the homeowner as well.
Yeah, I get that. Are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, you recommend approval of this, but are you recommending approval with any conditions?
Well, conditions that you may want to consider is the amenity package.
Right, and they don't
and the
go into
buffer.
any of that.
I guess that's what I'm asking, if we're going, I know you said in your chart it can be conditioned, and you also said you recommended approval. My question is, before we have the hearing and discussion next week, I'd be curious I'd like to know what conditions you think we need to have in it, so we know what to discuss.
Or to put it another way, what are we talking about? What does amenities mean, if we could flesh that out?
Well, the amenities, if it is, that would be required, are required per the zoning requirements if it exceeds 100 or above lots, then the developer is required to place in the amenity package 3 of them. Typically, if it were, for some reason, were to go below the 100, they would not have to, and that's the way it would appear if the variance was not requested. So to ensure that if it were to drop below 100 lots, we could condition it to say regardless that the amenity package would be required.
Okay, I guess to follow that question, is the developer at this point okay with the 10,000 square feet? And is there an amenity package or other types of conditions that the developer is ready to present to us?
Well, according to his plat layout, or his schematic layout, he has provided an opening into that green space, which would be, even though the plans don't show it, but according to our zoning regulations, they would be required to put in that amenity package. I have discussed it with him previously, and he initially stated that he was open to putting the pavilion, I believe a playground and a pool as part of the amenity package.
I don't
And
know
what are the
about-
size of
okay,
the
I'm
homes?
concerned about a vote coming up a week from tonight if we don't know what we're voting on.
Right. And what are the size of the homes? Minimum square
according-
footage is what?
According to the R1 requirement, it's minimum 1,600. He has submitted sketches that show that it would be anywhere between 1,800 and 2,200 square foot homes.
But we didn't get those sketches in our packet,
It's
right?
not in the package.
I would recommend that would be subject to a development agreement as we've done in the past, so that those items would be kind of locked down as part of the conditions.
Yeah, I think that's the way we need to do it. And I was talking to the owner of the property, who's one of my old friends, and to the developer about it. We just want to make sure that what gets built out there is going to be high quality. I've said many times, and I told them tonight, density for me is not the issue. The 10,000 square feet for the lots, that's fine, that's plenty, that's less grass to cut. We just want really nice houses with a nice amenity package that's going to encourage folks to move here and have a really, really nice place to live. So if we do what Logan is suggesting, I think it pretty much guarantees.
Required in the development agreement.
And in between now and next week, we'll charge staff with coordinating with the applicant to create those conditions, those agreed upon, and those will be back before you next week.
And I think I support this. I just need to know what we're voting on, that's all.
Correct.
Sounds familiar. Moving along to the 2130 West Spring Street variance, Mr. Stone.
Yes, this is, the location is 2130 West Spring Street. The applicant, well, Pat Kelly's been working hard with the applicant. Initially, the proposed development is going to end up being I guess 2 restaurants and 2 retail places sitting on .92 acres. The recommendation was we were willing to look at the buffer variance due to the existing landscaping on Arby's side and the Transco pipeline on the other side. The parking variance, initially when he came to us, it doesn't meet our CDO requirements. Head-to-head parking, it's supposed to be one parking 42-foot wide with the road against the Spring Street side. The applicant stated that he needed to have the full head-to-head parking, which would be a double row parking in the front and in the rear of the building. Would like to point out one thing when looking at this. If you look at the Dunkin' Donuts location, it's an acre and a half, and it has 2 retail spaces on it, and it meets all the requirements. We feel that the resources being forced to make the 4 retail centers on that piece of parcel, as far as we got the revised plan showing what he could potentially do, what I've printed, and he is willing, we were willing to try to make this work and relax some of the buffers, but still meet all of the landscape requirements per CDO. But if you look at the parking lots, they can't even meet our requirements, which is 9 by 20, it's 9 by 18, so you lose 4 feet in the front and rear of the building as far as what we're trying to get as far as dimensional locations. And in the landscape picture that I gave you, we would like to have seen a little bit more activity to soften the building as far as landscaping strips, and that's a 5 foot that would be required to break that up, and then you don't have room for your sidewalks, which is another 5 feet. So we're short a total of 18 feet of making something like this work. This all could be accomplished if there were 3 buildings there, we feel, and therefore it reduced the parking requirements. So he has come back and offered improvements to the rear of the buildings with parapets and more front to back matching veneers. But as it stands right now, we just can't get there with the CDO requirements, even dimensionally or landscaped. So at this point, we're at the recommendation of denial. You have any questions, I'd entertain them at this time.
I have a question. I understand a lot of what you just said is predicated on required parking for 4 businesses?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So since there's parking adjacent to this in the main shopping area, what would be the issue of making less required parking?
Well, that would probably be the applicant's decision whether that would be acceptable.
I believe that was offered at one point, Mr. Bradley, to lose a row, but gain it as a shared parking arrangement, if they could work that out. I don't believe the applicant wanted to go that direction. But we've tried to look at all the alternatives to force this thing in here while meeting our CDO requirements. I think we're close.
So,
We're very close.
Well,
for 4 businesses, how many, is there a specific amount of parking spaces required?
Yes, sir.
So we have apparently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spots that are right at numbers 3 and 5 at the top of your page. Theoretically, that they're required, or they could go away and you could use, if you can come to an agreement with the neighbor parking.
What I've demonstrated where you see the trees would be actual landscape islands to help break up the sea of asphalt. what I'm showing would automatically lose 5 parking places, so that puts it back down to 40. But that's still not gonna get your strip of landscape between the sidewalk and the building. We need an additional 10 feet in there, and from the front to the rear of the building, including the parking, the depths are not there. We're short 18 feet to meet the standards and do the landscaping to soften the building.
Do you know how
Essentially-
many parking spaces you would have if you used that like you're saying?
Well, ideally, you could remove the row of parking in the front of the building and have 3 offices there, and that whole dimension can change to where we can get the depth of being 18 feet. I know we're not in the business of looking at trying to design it, but Patrick and I have both worked hard at trying to look at this to try to not force the resource, but it's kind of hard to keep putting 10 pounds in a 20-pound bag.
Well, considering the fact that this is one of the last parcels in this area, and the fact that none of the others have complied with the CDO, it is new. We certainly want to create that in new areas of commercial development and in those areas where we can feasibly without diminishing the opportunity for free enterprise. And the fact that with this, you do see quite a bit of green space that you don't see at Arby's or at many of the other areas.
This was staff's recommendation.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to what was submitted.
And could we speak with the applicant about his ideas on this and actually give a variance on the number of spaces? You're saying we're missing 5, right?
Yeah, the applicant's here if you would like to hear his thoughts on this, because this is the first time he's seen what we've tried to help with mitigation of
Mr. Bembry?
CDO.
Ms. Malcolm, if I can just interject, on your zoning ordinance under the CDO, the code office has the authority to waive certain parking requirements for shared parking. However, the shared parking agreements with the adjoining property owners must be in place. So usually it's an issue of getting approval from your neighboring parcels. But also just a point, I do believe some of the recent developments have complied with the basic tenets of the CDO in terms of only 1 row of front-loaded parking. That would be Panera, that would be the Dunkin' Donuts, I believe only has 1 front-loaded row, and the Arby's adjoining next door. So there are multiple pieces that have gone in since 2014 that have met the basic. There may have been other variances granted. I can't speak to all of them, but there have been multiple in that general, what I call the Walmart area, that have been approved under the CDO, that have been built to the concept of the CDO with limited front-loaded parking.
Quick question, is the biggest issue with you is the amount of parking they have?
Now, meeting the CDO requirements, which is more than just parking. It's pushing the building forward. It's 1 row of parking. It's interdispersed landscaping to break up the asphalt.
I hope we're not trying to discourage companies from coming with stuff that we can actually
Well, even
change the variance on to be helpful to people that's trying to bring business to the city.
we're just presenting the zoning ordinance that's been approved and how it does not comply.
What are your thoughts?
So generally speaking, I see what you're saying with the Panera, the Dunkin' Donuts, and I forgot what the third business was. I think it was Arby's, that you mentioned having a single row of parking in front and meeting those guidelines. I think this situation differs in that we're dealing with multiple businesses. So even if we were to cut back to 3 businesses, it still wouldn't suffice having 1 row of parking for 3 businesses. Not to mention, those businesses have do a lot of transactions through their drive-throughs, so they don't even have anybody parking a lot of times in those spaces up front. So that's my argument there. I do appreciate you guys coming up with this plan because, in fact, I was supposed to have a plan coming here from my engineer, but he didn't get it to me until about 5 minutes until the meeting, and he actually emailed it to Patrick, so he should have it in his inbox. But basically, we came up with a plan that would reduce our parking by 3 spaces down to 42 parking spaces, and it has similar components to this with the shrubbery around the property. So that you guys should see soon. As it pertains to the parking space dimensions, you know, I'm not trying to downplay your requirements for I think it was it 9 by 20?
9 by 20?
Yeah, I've seen several instances, and I've developed throughout the Southeast, and I've seen several instances where parking spaces are 9 by 18, and people have gotten by just fine. But that's neither here nor there. I'm here to try and come up with a solution that we can all agree on. I've got 4 businesses that are excited to be in the city of Monroe, and I think you guys will appreciate all these businesses. I think they'll be a great addition to the community, and I also see y'all's argument in that you don't want to see one large parking field in a building. You want to see green space. You want to see, you know, nice aesthetics as well, not just a bunch of cement. So we've gone back to the drawing board, and you guys have seen our updated elevations where I think it was Larry that we spoke about it not kind of looking like an alleyway in the back. So I think we've fixed that a bit with the added parapets, making it uniform throughout. In addition to that, generally we put the meters for, you know, the water meter, the gas and all that stuff in the rear of the building. And we've designed it so that we're relocating that to the side of the building so that it's not visible for cars and patrons that are coming from the back. And the ladder as well is going to be on the side where T-Mobile's going, on the right-hand side. So we are making a lot of efforts with the building as well to kind of make it uniform throughout and not look bad in the rear, because we understand that a lot of patrons are going to be coming from that side. Our biggest issue coming into this is that, you know, these tenants have seen themselves go in a variety of different buildings, from being up on the road with their parking in the back, or they're building in the back and they're parking up front, and they've all, and I get it that, you know, in this scenario, you've got an access point in the back, but at the same time, these tenants have a huge concern with not only seeing that their business is being patronized, but also seeing that their customers are able to safely get out of their car, walk inside the front of the building, and be seen from the main road. That's a big safety issue to them. So, you know, I tried to, you know, argue it with them. I showed a plan to Patrick with the building up on the road that I tried to get the tenants to approve, and they were not having it. Not to mention Arby's, who made who agreed with us, because they actually have a restriction on chicken in their, there's a deed restriction on chicken, because the owner of this property owns the Arby's property. So when they split off and Arby's did a lease on the property adjacent, they put in there that this property can't serve chicken. And we got that waived by Arby's. So if we were to push the building up, Arby's would not be happy, because then we'd block Arby's. So we feel as though our plan kind of lines up exactly with Arby's now, in the flow with the interconnectivity between the two driveways, you know, will work out well for a lot of cars to go through Arby's, because we do have an access easement, and forgot who brought up the point earlier, but we can't get shared parking. So there's an REA in place for access, but we can't pick up any additional parking from any of the neighbors.
So first, I like your rear elevation. I appreciate you doing that. And second, it sounds like our disagreement is sheer number of parking spaces and landscaping. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Correct.
You can limit yours, you can come down to 3 from your plan,
Yes.
and our plan has them coming down 7, 5. So really, we're arguing over 2 parking spaces. Is what I'm.
Well, if he agrees to the green space, and I guess.
We'll evaluate their resubmittal over the next week and
go
bring it back forward next week, yeah.
I think we're at a good point, and I appreciate you coming in and working with us. And I, of course, appreciate Patrick and Daryl, and they're holding as firm as they can. I don't know that we're getting any farther tonight, but let me just say thank you.
Thank you.
And we're heading in the right direction.
Thanks for hearing me out.
Yes, sir. Thank you for coming in. Moving forward to the public hearing, conditional use at 1031 Charlotte Route Boulevard. Mr. Stone?
Yes. This is the conditional use for 216-unit apartment development. I would like to point council's attention to the future land use plan. This was approved in 17, updated January this year. One of the things I'd like to bring to your attention, council, is this is our roadmap for what we want our town to develop like. And it's a balanced plan that shows primarily residential areas as well as commercial and industrial areas. And one of the things I love about this plan, this is going to be really our economic engine to create retail, industry, jobs, et cetera. The areas that are red are our commercial retail areas. And if you look at it, it goes along the spine of Charlotte, Doral, and 138, and Spring Street, 11, and then on the east side of town, we have our industrial. The apartment complex that are in question here for conditional use, it's not a rezone. It is a provision within the zoning parameters to do a conditional use. One thing that I would like to point out to you is that the apartment complex, obviously, in nature, is not a commercial entity. It will not produce jobs. It will not create retail, et cetera. We have plenty of areas, other opportunities that could be explored for that as well. But I also want to point out, too, that when considering for a conditional use, in the packet, they state the reason for how it complies with the zoning ordinance, section 1425. Number 10 states that granting this request would not have a domino effect in that it becomes an opening wedge for further rapid growth, urbanization, or other land use change beyond what is indicated on the comprehensive plan. Currently, this office recommends denial. The comprehensive plan shows this property as being commercial/retail. So at this time, the domino effect that we don't want to see occur, if this were to happen, is then have multiple other apartment complexes coming into it when we haven't even gotten approved a commercial retail as of right now. So that's this office's recommendation. If you have any questions, I'll entertain them.
Are there any questions?
The question was just based on one thing Darrell just said, very at the end. If the commercial, you said since we don't have commercial approved in the area at this point.
In this exact location, yes.
Location. If the commercial was definitive in that area, would you have the same feelings toward this apartment?
We could potentially would recommend it if all the commercial activities were nearly fully developed and there were a few out parcels that were remaining, that there was no interest in commercial development. That then might be the time to consider an apartment-type complex of this nature.
But I mean, if that commercial development that's been proposed across the road was there.
If it was there today, it's speculative at this moment. A lot can happen between now and then, but our recommendation is we only have X amount of red areas to create business and commercial use and retail. We'd love to use that to be the stability of this city in providing jobs and the economic engine for growth that is the right type of growth in our areas zoned commercial and retail.
And many times, if you reference, say, the strip to the Mall of Georgia, Georgia 20, you see the commercial on the front, but then you will see the out parcels on the back side not visible from the road to be those apartment complexes, but they don't usually abut and mix right in with that commercial.
And typically, that came at the very end of the project.
Right.
Do we have any other questions or comments?
I'll make one other comment. And I'm not arguing for this right now. I'm trying to look at a lot of arguments both ways because I've had so many discussions the last several days with people. And I look at the plan out there and I look at that area of Charlotte Rowell leading over on both sides and leading to the proposed YMCA and the school and the other things going on over on that side. I'm not sure if that shopping center develops that's proposed with the grocery store and the other things. I'm not convinced that we want the across the road from there to Highway 11 all developed as commercial. I mean, I'm almost thinking that's more retail than we want. That way, pulling away from downtown. Just a question, just a thought. Do you really want that entire area on both sides of the road to all go retail?
This is 216 units, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So we would go with a guess of 350 automobiles?
Well, there's going to be 2-bedroom units is what's being proposed, so
That's
that
all.
you could potentially have 2 cars per
Just
each,
under 400.
per each unit.
Yeah, but if I'm understanding what you just said a few minutes ago in your recommendation for denial, is if this same complex was proposed off of North Broad, for example, which is residential, then you would have a different recommendation? Is the location?
It's not location, it's more about timing. 10 years from now, we might want to entertain something of that sort once we see the domino effect of retail and commercial go.
Similar to the Mall of Georgia.
I'm still asking the same question. If this was, they wouldn't need our approval, but if this was coming in right now in an area that's already zoned for multifamily,
For R2, yes,
you wouldn't have any objection.
it's what it's zoned for. We wouldn't have any objections to
So
that.
that is a location issue then.
Well, it's the zoning. We got areas that are zoned R2 that would complement that type of facility. Right now, this is conditioned. It's not a rezoning, but it's not the highest and best yield for that type of property at this time, we feel. All this under for your consideration.
And my thought on it is this, I was kind of wondering why the property owners would even want to do this at this point. Because obviously, the highest and best use for commercial property is commercial property. They don't have the commercial property out of the ground yet, and all of a sudden, they're switching around to taking commercial property, reducing it to really economically what is a lower producing property. I don't quite get it. And I think Mr. Stone kind of hit it on the head. That's not really the pattern you generally see. If you're going to have the high-density residential in conjunction with your commercial, normally the pattern is the commercial gets built first, and as Ms. Malcolm was saying, then you see if there's going to be residential, that it's more, for lack of a better term, behind the commercial. So this just doesn't make any sense. And in terms of what Mr. Bradley was saying of location, we've got a ton of property that's already zoned R2 where they could build this project tomorrow, no questions asked. Why do we want to eat up this income-generating commercial property? You know, now if they can't sell it for commercial property somewhere down the road, that's a different issue. But this just doesn't make any sense to me.
You gonna make a motion?
Well, not tonight, that's next week. Want to hear from them, see what they have to say when they get here for the hearing.
Are there any other questions or comments? We'll come back to that next week. Moving to the application of beer and wine on-premise consumption at the Cotton Cafe. Mr. Stone?
Yes, we got all the paperwork in and over to legal. I don't know if legal has any comments, but I believe I'll let them discuss.
Yes, that application's in order.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? I think this is a simple change of ownership. Moving to the application of beer and wine package sales, Murphy Oil USA. Mr. Stone?
Yes, the paperwork's in order, over to legal for their comment.
Yes, the application's in order from our office.
Questions, comments? Moving to service delivery strategy authorization and resolution, Mr. Probst.
Thank you, Mayor. We've talked about the service delivery strategy update pretty extensively over the last many months, if not year plus. Most items are relatively innocuous in their changes, but the few big things that we've changed, I think, are good wins for our city and our taxpayers, because the whole spirit of the service delivery strategy is to prevent double taxation through the services that we deliver with the county government. One of those being road paving. Our city taxpayers have for years been paying into both funds for our own streets and transportation department for an enhanced level of service, but also to the Walton County Board of Commissioners for road paving. We haven't really been getting the benefit of having that great equipment and that extra staff from the Board of Commissioners for many years, and now we've got, as part of this agreement, where Walton County will be doing our annual LMIG paving for us, like Mr. Steele mentioned earlier. He's deep patching Alcovey Street, so this will be our first test run of this. That'll save us a great deal of money and time, and SPLOS projects will be secondary, and we'll do IGAs with the county each year for these projects as they come out. And if the county has additional time and resources in their annual schedule, and if we have additional funding to do small projects, we can do that as well. So that's one of the biggest changes in this. Parks is another one. What we've identified, and we've talked about for the past year or so, is the need to bring back our passive parks in-house in the city of Monroe. It's going to take some capital improvements, a lot, to bring them back up to our standards where we want them for the next 20 to 50 years. But as part of this, we're going to do subsequent IGAs with the county for each park that we take down and bring back in-house. So, you know, that will go along with our SPLOS program, which was recently passed. And of course, we'll be working on grant funding to help bring those up to a higher condition. The rest of the service delivery strategy is just tweaks here and there, map updates of service areas, whether it be water, sewer, gas. Those are the primary changes, no change on the electric. I'll be happy to take any questions.
The only one I have is, it doesn't appear that there was any change really on animal control.
Correct.
But.
And I'll address that from the
Please.
joint cities perspective. Getting into the animal control world is extremely expensive. We have to open up shelter of our own, create our own enforcement mechanisms, so on and so forth. So for the time being, I won't say it will never happen, but for the time being, it makes much more fiscal sense to allow the county to continue those services for us. Our taxpayers are already paying for it. And if we were to eventually create our own one day, which would cost millions of dollars to invest in, then you'd have to start creating a special taxing district and revising the SDS. But just dollars and cents, it doesn't really make sense to move down that road right now.
But that's not to say that we can't, as a city, get more aggressive with the tethering.
Correct. So those are two kind of mutually exclusive issues. This is who is going to provide the service,
Right.
and then whether you want to negotiate with the county as far as the policy and how it's implemented. That's another issue that we can continue to work on, even under this SDS. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Regarding the tethering, I understand where we've been going with all this. And like I told the nice group of ladies that we've talked with a number of times, it's not so much whether or not a dog is tethered. To me, completely inappropriate and out of line. Somebody might judge it differently. I don't think we're tethering a golden doodle or a Yorkie poo. I think the concern is that they're tethering fighting dogs and treating them poorly. And I think pretty much anybody who has common sense can see when a dog's healthy and being treated well or not. And that's where the concern lies, that we're going to have somebody here who would tether an animal, who would treat an animal poorly. That person who's going to treat an animal poorly is going to treat other people poorly. There's more apt to have drug use in the house and more criminal activity. So I think the tethering ban is something that would just actually lead our law enforcement officials to pursue something else. But in this particular case, I would hope that our officers would be able to go to a house, see a dog that's mistreated, and act accordingly. So I'm not really sure that we need an actual ordinance in any different than what the county has. I just would like our team to use more common sense to see when a dog's being treated poorly, or any other animal or child. So I think it's something that we definitely need to discuss more, and I'd be, always interested in everybody's input.
And one last note, this does include a resolution for adoption next week, and Walton County will be adopting the SDS on the same timeline. All the other cities have completed it thus far.
And before we move to the next thing, are there any other questions? Hearing none, on-call engineering for discussion, Mr. Probst.
Thank you, Mayor. This is really just for discussion. I can bring something back to you later on, but I just kind of wanted your input to see if this is something you want to go in this direction of. We've been working with Keck and Wood for many years on a variety of transportation projects, and we kind of do so much. I think it might be more efficient and a little bit more cost-effective if we had them as an on-call engineer. A lot of cities do this so that we're not getting into project proposals for each and every single thing that we do. And then that kind of gives us an ability to negotiate an hourly rate that we use for what we call minor projects. So there, we can just pick up the phone and get something done immediately without, dragging something out a couple weeks through a proposal process, even for something under $10,000 sometimes.
That makes sense.
Anybody? Seems to me.
That's suitable. I'll move forward and start negotiating a proposal and prices with them, and I'll bring that back to you in the next month or two.
Thank you, Mr. Probst. You're about to be up to bat again. Downtown green remediation, please.
Finally, we have gotten to the remediation process of the downtown green. This has been going on for just over a year, and I've been in weekly, if not more, contact with our environmental consultants, EnviroRisk, on getting this process completed. I don't know if you've been to my office and seen the binders, a couple of them, but this much paperwork has gone into this process, and this is the tail end of it, to where we're actually going to physically dig out the little bit of dirt that needs to be remediated to complete that EPD brownfield program. It is expensive, and the bulk of that cost is about $55,000 to landfill the dirt. The other bulk is equipment rental. Just because of the nature of the work, we wanted the specialized crews to do it. Not that it's really dangerous or anything, it's just the process and checkbox you gotta do to satisfy the state. So the total price quoted was $87,650 from EnviroRisk Consultants, and we'll be paying that through the 2019 SPLOST program. That'll be our first real expenditure in that program.
Are there any questions or comments from Mr. Probst?
I mean, actually, it came out a lot better than you anticipated, correct?
Yeah, I think we tossed around the $300,000, $400,000 figure early on. This is much better than anticipated for the actual cleanup of the site.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the $87,650 for the soil remediation downtown Green.
I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Bradley. Mr. Ross Bradley, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. David Dickinson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
Opposed.
Excuse me?
I oppose.
One opposition? That passes. Keeping in mind, as this is our first SPLOST expenditures, we're doing 70% for transportation in this upcoming SPLOST, or the one that's just passed, and 30% for the parks. So we hope once we get finished with our downtown Green area, we'll be able to do more around countywide. I'd like to get Coker Field back over so we could actually use that, but I will not approve any event for any single person in a park that's closed. I'm not going to do any preferential treatment. So I just want you to understand that. Now, I need a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Malcolm. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ross Bradley. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Good night.